This video will explain some of the ideas in prioritized training on points that are learnable, worth learning, and not yet learned. So as a quick overview, this paper is also focused on this problem of active learning, curriculum learning, online batch selection, trying to achieve better training efficiency by better selecting the next batch of data examples to do the gradient descent update on. So active learning, generally focusing on uncertainty, as the next slide will show. Curriculum learning, the easy examples, trying to build up from the easy up to the more challenging examples, in online batch selection, just looking for the highest loss, the highest gradient norm, these kinds of ideas for how we're going to pick the next data batch to sample from. So the authors begin with some illustrations of how label noise, similar to the collective outliers in Mind Your Outliers, how label noise will kind of ruin these batch selection techniques. And label noise is, in accounting for noise generally, is definitely important for these real world data sets. And so we need some ways to overcome this. So they proposed this new model. I didn't completely understand it, but I kind of understand the fuzzy ideas of these two ideas, and I think they're big ideas, so I wanted to leave them in this AI Weekly Update curation of papers. The Goldilocks acquisition, Goldilocks meaning just right, blending together easy, hard, and this kind of idea with this information theoretic idea of what do you gain about the validation labels, where you train a model to convergence in the validation set. So you kind of use these two models that are trained from the same distribution, but these different kinds of sets, in order to gain information about what you might achieve by training on this given data point, and then using a smaller proxy model to make that more efficient. So this will be a quicker video because I didn't completely understand the full description of the algorithm, but overall I think that there's something in there that maybe you can take away and build on it further yourself. So if you have a better understanding of this, I'd really love to hear it in the comments. And otherwise, here's the video. So here are the illustrations of how label noise impacts these different batch selection techniques. On the y-axis are the percentage of the batch that are constructed with noisy labels. So they artificially introduce label noise, and then the model selects these noisy examples. But I really wasn't able to understand these plots too well, and the definition of reducible, irreducible losses, reducible, irreducible, something about information theory, but I wasn't really able to figure out what's going on. But here's another plot showing this kind of trend, and then this one is showing the Bayesian selection algorithm as well, the bald algorithm, the percentage of how much of it is selecting the noise, and then showing that overall the information theoretic reducible technique is selecting less of the noisy examples. So here's the proposed Goldilocks information acquisition algorithm, something about how much information you gain about the new Y label from a candidate query point, the XY label, by training a model to convergence on the validation set, and using the entropy of these distributions and how much information you gain from the new X about Y given the validation set, in order to do some way of this data selection. And I'd really appreciate it if anybody watching this could get a better understanding of this and maybe explain it in the comments or something like that. But here's another kind of part of this that I think is really interesting, is this idea of using a small proxy model for these online batch selection, the computation of the high loss and the selection, and this kind of idea, the uncertainty. So in their experiments, they use a model that about 20 times smaller in terms of number of parameters, 500,000 parameters compared to 11 million parameters. And looking at these smaller models, maybe distillation, something like that, that could help with the efficiency, and again with these like ML ops kind of pipeline tools of how we organize deep learning training. So I don't completely understand the algorithm really at all, but here are the interesting ideas of using some kind of converged model with a validation set to acquire information and reduce the uncertainty with these kind of entropy calculations, and then using a small proxy model, which is an interesting idea for the sake of speeding up, making it more efficient with these batch selection algorithms. Thanks for watching this quick video on prioritized training on the points that are learnable, worth learning, and not yet learned. Although I didn't really understand this paper, I think it has some interesting idea with respect to this information acquisition idea, these small proxy models, overall studying the space of how these batch selection techniques like online batch selection, curriculum learning, and model uncertainty active learning respond to controlled experiments where you introduce label noise. And I think overall this will be a really interesting paper as it's developed further, and it's something that I think someone out there will learn something from, and why I kept it in the weekly update series, even though I don't really understand it too well myself. So anyways, thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for the rest of the AI Weekly Update series on Henry AI Labs.